Welcome to the Legal Benchmarks podcast.
Legal is failing to serve the needs of its end users. I don't think the way that most people experience legal outcomes is optimal.
Where we have conversations with people at the frontier of building, testing, and using AI in the legal profession.
If it can turn prose into 19th century poetry, then why can't it turn my ideas into a Fortune 500 contract?
The idea that you have to have 15 people on a matter is done.
Many AI governance frameworks in of training school because a lot of them stop at principles. They stop at writing policies. So essentially, they become sort of like a thought exercise.
Hear the voices shaping the future of legal work.
I'm your host, Anna Guo.
In this conversation, I'll be speaking to Andrew Greenfeld, the founder of Litigation Labs. Andrew was previously the head of legal operations at Zoom and is a veteran of more than 20 trials. In our super fun and engaging conversation, Andrew shared the AI tech stack that he used in a recent jury trial to do the work of a paralegal, an associate, and a research librarian all combined. And why, in this whole process, the one person he could not replace was a lawyer. Let's hear from Andrew.
I'm Andrew Greenfeld. I am the founder of Litigation Labs, a company that I'm just launching that advises corporations and law firms with a real focus on mid-sized and boutiques on litigation operations and use of generative AI technologies that actually move the needle in the trenches where the work and value happens. I left Zoom about a couple months ago. I was the head of legal operations at Zoom. Was there for about 5.5 years. And before Zoom, I was a senior trial paralegal at large firms like Weil, Gotshal, and McKenzie, McKenzie, over 20 trials and arbitrations. And I really bring that battle-tested perspective to everything that I do now.
So you kind of started out in trial-related legal ops support, but then you went ahead and joined a tech company, Zoom. Is it because they have a lot of litigation or what's going on there?
Yeah. So it's funny. I actually was reached out to on LinkedIn by a recruiter in the summer of 2020. And I was working on a giant antitrust case against a large multinational coffee pod maker who we shall not name, and traveling all around the country with a lead partner and taking corporate representative depots. And then the world shut down in March 2020 and like 100 facts depositions, third-party fact depositions, subpoena recipients, grocery stores, coffee makers, everyone you can imagine, went onto Zoom. And, I was on a team where the partner really believed that you had to law and order SVU people in person to get the truth, to get what you needed, the sound bites that you need for depositions in U.S. litigation. And what we learned is actually Zoom is the perfect platform for taking, mid to lower stakes depositions where you're just trying to get information from people that don't really have skin in the game in the litigation at scale, where we were doing depositions every single day. We were thankfully distracted from all the stuff going on in the world and all the death and destruction. And in the summer of 2020, when I was reached out to on LinkedIn, I almost thought they had looked at the metadata of my Zoom account and plucked me from the ethers. This guy uses Zoom a lot and really well. And it was 30-minute interviews. And I was hired on by the compliance and ethics team, which surprised me. I thought they would put me in the litigation department or whatever. And then I learned there wasn't really that many departments or any kind of structure at Zoom at that point. And so I had a chance to it was apparent that I had a chance to really build from the ground floor at the Zoom legal department. And boy, was that an understatement.
Yeah. So wait, you haven't told me how they plucked you out from the ethers to join them. Did they ever explain?
No. I got the golden ticket for Willy Wonka, and I didn't want to turn into a blueberry or something, so I stopped guessing.
Wow. And so did you do a lot of litigation related work at Zoom, or was very diverse kinds of legal ops related work?
Yeah. So for starters, it was really focused on building out the compliance function. The Zoom had been hit with an FTC order, and they were being investigated by different regulatory bodies. And the compliance organization was actually a separate org from legal. There were two different orgs, both reporting to the chief operating officer org. And so a lot of the work I did was jumping on the 1,000-long Zendesk subpoena queue, helping out trust and safety, but also putting in a disclosures process, gifts on hospitality, conflicts of interest, jumping on these giant regulatory investigations, working directly with outside counsel, doing tons of e-discovery, standing up hotline, corporate whistleblower hotline, investigation procedure, and dealing with a massive influx of those kind of reports and reporting on it to the board of directors. And really doing a lot of bespoke projects as fires would come up for the chief compliance officer, my boss, who was the associate general counsel of compliance and ethics. And then that role sort of expanded over time. The company, went from the highest highs, I think the stock was at 500 or something when I joined, to the lowest lows where it crashed to like 50 after the pandemic. And it was a time of upheaval, of layoffs, of, the compliance org actually merged with the legal org after a terms of service snafu, where we basically said we're going to train our AI on your data, and everyone freaked out, and someone had to take, the fall for it. And at that point in the fall of 2023, entered the operations org. It was a weird org. It wasn't legal operations. It was COO operations, where the idea was we're going to be super lean. We're going to have a team of the best operators at Zoom sort of working on all the different operations problems. And that went from a team of like 28 people to eventually 6 or 7 people. And in that process, I acquired corporate training, like the security awareness training, the compliance and ethics training that I'd been in charge of for years. I sort of thought, might as well just give them other training too, to managing outside counsel, to formally taking over e-discovery for the entire organization instead of other teams that would rely on vendors and law firms for it before, and really got to consolidate my portfolio in a meaningful way around high impact areas that allowed me to do what I like doing, build even further and make things better and save shareholders money.
Wow, that is so much to unpack. But I'm super curious about one point that you mentioned earlier, which was when the pandemic first hit, Zoom became like, the hottest kid in town. It's like Claude now, I would say. Like everybody was using Zoom. Everyone's talking about Zoom. And instead of being a catastrophe for law firms, you mentioned that law firms realized they could handle the less important or maybe lower dollar amounts, is it depositions and other kind of hearings on Zoom rather than in person, therefore saving them costs, and they could handle a lot more cases. Is that understanding correct?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So do you feel like we are experiencing something similar with AI coming onto the scene? Or is this a completely different beast where law firms should be, panicking because it's not only saving them money and letting them handle more cases, it's actually like killing their entire business. This is like a really big pivot, and I'm trying to connect the dots. So it's not a perfect connection, but that's like what just popped up in my head. Like, is this more of an opportunity or is this more of a risk? And how does it compare to the previous technological shifts that you've seen in your career?
It's such a great question. And, I always joke, I think Zoom killed the Hilton Garden Inn and Courtyard by Marriott's in certain litigation heavy places, but that's more than made up for by people traveling to sell illegal AI tools. So we're good. No, I think with Zoom, it was always about, do you actually need to travel for this? Do you need to spend the money? Does the case budget need to be consumed by these expenses that are unnecessary given the level of risk or level of importance of deposition, for instance, or showing up to a court hearing? That's a case management conference versus showing up to a court hearing that's a motion for summary judgment on a 9-figure patent infringement. Big difference, right? And I think, when you look at, just take, for example, discovery and litigation, which accounts for the mass, the most of the spend in the United States in litigation is on discovery, exchanging documents, getting witnesses to testify to things in depositions and battling it out over all of these things that it used to be paper. People used to show up, this is before my time, but people used to show up giant rooms of contract attorneys with flags and Post-its, and they would each get a banker's box, and you'd have to go through, sift through paper, and there'd be a stack of the hot ones that were like really like juicy, and then there'd be a stack of the ones that just had nothing to do with anything, like Jimmy John's advertisements or like Subway coupons or whatever. And then there'd be a stack of, these might be relevant, I'm not sure, maybe they're speaking in code or something. And then that moved on to the relativities of the world, and then you needed a vendor team of experts, technologists to sort of work it all for you, and then silver plate it for you to do that Post-it note review digitally, except instead of Post-it notes, it was little radio buttons turning comments fields. And we're still in that mode, but then that sort of moved to the right where you have these DIY cloud tools where now you can upload your own PST, email export. You can do your own review. You don't need technologists pressing buttons for you to effectively do a lot of lower risk type of stuff that you once did. And so I'd say like this, the Zoom parallel between e-discovery and document production and evidence marshaling and deposition analysis, and the Zoom thing of like, not spending tons of money on something that's commodity. I think it's very apt. And I think where AI comes in is this entirely new rail of, okay, do I need 20 people in the conference room? They used to be flagging documents with Post-it notes. Now they're pressing buttons on relativity. Well, can it be 5 people? And I think the resounding answer that I've seen so far is yes, it can be 5 people. In fact, it could be 2 people. It could even be 1 person.
Why can it not be
Yeah.
what? 0. I think it's something we should touch on definitely later on in the conversation.
Yeah.
If not,
And I have a lot of thoughts.
yeah.
I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on that. And it just going back to your question, like, is it going to kill business models? No, right? When you think about evidence and marshaling evidence with the nature of how easy it is to create software or just how digital people's lives are, where people aren't showing up 5 days a week to an office, people are oftentimes being hybrid. There's a lot more like ephemeral communications. There's a lot more chats. There's a lot more Slacks and Teams and Zooms and a lot more digital documents and work product and meeting summaries generated, where there still is a great degree in strategy, especially in high-end litigation investigations, regulatory investigations, enforcement actions, that requires thoughtful humans in the loop, people with the actual experience, maybe not flagging documents, but at least using relativity and working up cases and investigations, that you need to orchestrate not only the right prioritization sequentially of what you're going to look at, what you're going to do, but also being able to, on your feet, very quickly refocus, reprioritize, re-strategize based on what you're seeing and the outputs of these tools. I think it's really, saying kill business model, I think maybe some mid-market firms that have always been hiding in what I call the thicket of commodity work, like those vines at the bottom of Splash Mountain or whatever it's called now at Disneyland. It sort of just stuff sort of disappears. And there's the lords of the thicket with the staves saying, "Ye shall not pass. I am in charge of the thicket and I will bill you $1,200 an hour." I think a lot of that's going away, but I think that where that's going away, there's other opportunities, maybe not quite as many as are being eliminated, but there's opportunities to get in and at high value, strategic, or at least more strategic work that moves the needle on the overall strategy, because these things are a team effort and they will always be a team effort.
Wow. So many questions. I don't know even where to begin. I guess maybe I just want to set the scene a little bit. Do you think that your perspective on how AI is transforming the legal profession is different from a lawyer's perspective? Because I am a lawyer and I speak to a lot of lawyers on this, and yet you come at it from a legal ops perspective. And I wonder if that shapes your focus on this.
Man, what a great question. And I think about this every single day, where for much of my career, especially as a trial paralegal, I've noticed, for instance, we're talking about relativity, I've noticed the attorneys never log in. They sort of want someone like me that they know understands the law and is, with them at the depositions, passing Post-it notes, but also someone that chose not the lawyer path, someone that chose the paralegal path, because they also know in part that I'm really technology forward. And they rather focus on the high level strategic stuff. They rather me hand them a physical or an iPad-based digital binder of the key stuff for them to look at and prepare for their stuff for, rather than be embroiled in the technology themselves. I found, at least at a very high level, at the very fancy law firms that I worked at. I think the way that's colored my perspective with the AI stuff is it's exactly the same. And the way I talk about AI and legal, there's 3 buckets and they overlap. So you can sort of we think in litigation sort of left to right. So we can go with that, where on the far left, there's the AI infrastructure. There's infrastructure AI, which is the 11 million documents in a database, with tools on top of that really help prioritize and get to the truth a lot quicker than if you were divvying it up between 100 contract attorneys in a giant room, even digitally. And then there's the strategic AI, the AI that's able to do research, that's able to look at precedent, that's able to find cases that are similar to yours, or if you're a company, being able to mine all your past litigation files with your documents, that you own, that you don't need to dispose of at the end of the litigation because they're yours, and to get insights from that and not to have to rework the wheel with the same C-suite executives, getting the documents and emails and chats collected with the same attorney comments from Gibson and Dunn, the same work product, being able to reuse that and apply it to your situation, while also looking at developments in case law, what analysis of what judge you're assigned, and to put it all together in a way that you're able to get what you had to hire Dr. Phil's courtroom sciences company or someone like that before and pay them a lot of money. You can get that really, really quickly, really, really early, where you can make a decision. Should we settle? Should we farm this out to a law firm? Should we fight this? Should we do some digging ourselves now for the first time because we have these tools? And then there's the tactical AI, which is, we talk about the trial I did this year, but it is using tools in the trenches to come up with the information, answers, work product that you need in the moment to fight the battle and win the battle. And there is a ton of overlap between all 3 of them. And in terms of how lawyers are interacting with them, I think you have more and more lawyers. They're still not really engaging with the AI infrastructure because they want people like me and others to do that. Scale, it's not really worth their time, and their clients don't really like them billing to it a lot of the time. The strategic and the tactical that's where lawyers are reading enough articles in the Wall Street Journal, enough ex posts by AI first lawyers, getting curious and understanding that this technology is so disruptive that I actually need to start understanding this. And if possible, I need to start using it in a safe way under the umbrella of privilege, confidentiality, security in my own practice, or else be left behind if I don't at least understand.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you mentioned earlier that you can now reduce, let's say, a room of lawyers doing the relativity. Is it like the document hot or not? Check, what do you call it? E-discovery. Is it e-discovery?
E-discovery, yeah. It's like It's Hot or Not, which is a great game show. Hot or Not.
It's been such a long time since I've done litigation. I was actually in one of those rooms doing the hot or not button clicks. It was like super boring job, but it like bills a lot of hours. But anyways, that sidetrack.
It does, and it still does. And yeah, it's like, it's hot or not, it's responsive or not responsive, it's privileged or not privileged. And, the LLMs are really, really good, just like machine learning, right? Like old-fashioned tar, like machine learning is really good at when you have someone smart like Anna doing the hot or not, and you do it on 500 documents. Well, machine learning is really good, and it's been really good for years and years at extrapolating and then applying that to the rest of the document set. And then you still have to review every document, but it prioritizes what you should look at first that will help you decide what your strategy should be.
Yeah. So I think the interesting part about that is this higher level reasoning work or judgment work can now be outsourced to LLMs because they can be trained on the patterns. They can be trained on the previous like case law or whatever it is to apply legal judgment in different aspects of legal work. And yet you mentioned the person that you cannot cut down is the person that orchestrates the system. And it seems like the person that orchestrates the system is someone that is with more of an operation background rather than just, the experts that wanted everything already curated and handed to them so they can do the reasoning work. Do you think there is that shift there where traditionally what we thought was the more prestigious expert level work is now starting to be actually the most threatened? And whereas the people who set up the systems who may not have the pedigree or, the credentials of a JD or LLM, those people who understand the systems, who've actually set up and run through those systems are becoming more and more valuable and maybe even more valuable than the experts in the room?
No, yes and no. I think for certain things, like evidence marshaling, like machine learning, like LLMs applied to document relevance, where you don't really need to understand the law or how things actually play out in a litigation from file to trial and where the strategic traps are, where the 60 chess moves are played, that's true. That's true. I think e-discovery is a perfect example going back to that. But the interesting thing, and this goes back to the pro bono trial in California State Court that I worked on, there's traditionally in law firms a role and responsibility hierarchy, and there's layers, and it's sort of widely understood. X is doing Z, Y is doing U, and then it rolls up to the senior partner who's giving the last review and approval. And I think that has been completely blown up by these tools. How so? Well, a paralegal like me who understands the law, has done these hundreds of times, has gone to trial dozens of times, but also does the deposition grunt work, like reviews documents for depo preps, but also makes the binders and also flies there and also is control effing PDFs like in 2019 as the witness is spouting their spout and being able to catch them in lies, impeach them in the moment with thousands of printed documents behind you in boxes that you're just marshaling by control effing PDFs. And it's that skill set, the people that can intersect with all of these things, where the most value is brought. So for instance, legal research, drafting oppositions to all these bench briefs and motions that fly during trial in the moment based on things that people said in real time, or the shifting landscape of the legal issues of a case during multi-week trial. Well, what I found during my pro bono trial is thanks to a point solution in California State Court developed by literally nuclear rocket lab scientists and JDs, actually called Opine Law. I was able to generate research memoranda on specific research questions that were relevant to drafting opposition briefs or bench briefs, or even just brainstorming about strategy and where we should go on cross or direct exams on key witnesses as it relates to proving claim elements under the law in California State Court. And what I found is the layer of associate and counsel and paralegal and research librarian and yada, 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 litigation support was all compressed into me, where the lawyers would send me the research question. I would come up with a high fidelity draft using the Opine point solution, checking it in Westlaw, finding more stuff in Westlaw, running that through Claude to see how it would frame it, instructing it not to add any case law itself, but to frame it around the argument, let's just say, of the motion that came in, and checking it myself, doing the paralegal site check, the human in the loop, finding out that, 85% of these sites are amazing and on point. But you know what? 15% of the sites supporting these arguments, it was right on like a shallow level if you just read the head notes. But reading into this like any judge or any judge's clerk would, it's actually not applicable to us. Delete, quote, delete, 1 or 2 deletions before sending it off to the attorneys prevented what I know to be a copy and paste error of massive proportions, where they throw that in their filing. I call it kernel copy paste. They take it, they trust you did your number on it, it looks good to them, they read the head notes in Westlaw, check it, and they filed it off, and then they get embarrassed in a hearing, they lose the motion, bad things happen. And by being that paralegal, technologist, whatever it is that's dealing with the work and logistics, you have a healthy respect for pausing and QCing, quality controlling, checking carefully everything. And so I think, to your point, the not necessarily lawyer, the paralegal skill set is becoming more and more important, and it's usurping the roles that used to just generate the research memoranda in a lot of ways.
Wow. So you said it's able to cut down so much human resources that was previously needed to do what you just described into just you alone with a few tools. So walk me through how you built your tool stack and what roles do you think it replaces the most if you design and use a tech stack in the right way, like you do for litigation matters?
Yeah, I think I kind of alluded to it just now, but the first part of the question is like how I built my tech stack. Well, some of these are just kind of like Westlaw, for instance. Like you really have 2 major players. There's Westlaw and there's LexisNexis, and that's kind of like the source of truth for legal research, at least in U.S. litigation.
Why didn't you start with Westlaw and Lexis, for example?
Well, exactly. And it's really just like I built the rest of my tech stack. It's going in, I kind of liken myself to like a provincial farmer's market shopper in the south of France. Like I'll take my little basket, not a huge shopping cart at Costco, but a little basket, and I'll walk through the stalls. I'll taste the strawberries and the cheese and the bread of the legal tech vendors. And by doing that every day, and by actually being involved in the trenches for years and years doing the work, I'll know that's a really, really good strawberry, man, and it works. And this could help me win on a tactical level when filing that opposition brief. And that was kind of like the opine of the world. And then this cheese is really good. Instead of just a bunch of PDFs in a Drive folder or on SharePoint, organized, but in the best way by properly named files and folders and things, it's accessible by everyone on the team. Everyone knows where it is. It's not like Evercron, another tool I love. Shout out to Evercron, where it's a chronology, it's a relativity integrated to the right AI-powered e-discovery, hearing, deposition, trial preparation tool. It's a deposition designation tool where you can come in and engage in that process, counter designation to the other side, clipping video clips for trial. It's an everything app for litigation. It's a power tool. Wow, this allows me to do all the things I did with PDFs and SharePoint and Drive folders so much better. And it's by just going out and sampling this stuff. When you realize that 1 in 10 really pass muster, taste good, actually work, actually move the needle on your old-fashioned Weil Gotshal paralegal workflows that have always worked for me. And 9 out of 10 is just a bunch of smoke, not really adding much value beyond what Claude Enterprise can add. So that's sort of how I built my tech stack, and why I used like this point niche nuclear scientist developed research tool and not just Westlaw is when using the Westlaw deep co-counsel, deep research AI tools, they're really good, but I found them to be lacking in actually generating like the one-shot purpose-built mock thought exercise briefs in a compelling way that relied on complex legal reasoning to weave in everything together, where I think a lot of people are taking those Westlaw deep research reports and outputs, and then they're like export, like what I do still on top of all this, export the PDFs of the case law, and then run it through a really sophisticated enterprise-grade secure, zero retention, zero training, LL, and then you have something. But you sort of have to be Chef Boyardee doing all of these steps, and oftentimes you have 4 hours to respond to someone's bench brief in trial before lunchtime, before the jury breaks for lunch. And you really need to get something more fully developed that has reliable case law that you can trust. At least 85% of it is reliable in front of the lawyers to make those strategic judgment decisions. Like the judge is asking you to make before 1 p.m. and it's 9 a.m.
Okay, let's piece it all together. How does Andrew spend that 4 hours to respond and prepare to this bench brief from start to finish? And what tool are you using each step of the way to get it through to the finish line?
Yes. So the first tool that I use, and going back to this pro bono trial, it was on a budget. I did not have budget for a lot of these more sophisticated tools like the Evercrons of the world, which I would use. And so I have a home brewed application, of course, that I made myself. It's called Case Build AI. domain is casebuild.ai, and it's something that I don't sell. It's something that I give away to my customers for free because it is transparently what I describe it as. It's an anthropic wrapper with my brain and taste and judgment infused into the UX and user interface and just how it works. And so what I use it for is to upload at the end of a case, you're going to trial, sides of exchange trial exhibits, the sides of exchange motions, and the judge rules on those motions, and the sides agree to depositions that could be used, and then there's depositions from the case that you've used to impeach witnesses. You take all of that stuff that is at the very, very end of a case, you load it into this tool, and you can AI chat with the latest Anthropic model on top of it. Thanks to Claude Code, I built it. Thanks to Opus 4.6, it ran on the Anthropic engine in a secure, zero retention, zero training way. And the first crack I take is pressing the little attachment button that I made myself, uploading the motion papers from the other side, running it through, and having all of those case facts and all of that strategic meta prompting from a 170 IQ fancy big law lawyer who lives within my app, give that first analysis just based on the facts. I then would take that memo, I would load it into the point solution, whether Westlaw, whether Opine in California State Court, and I would get a fully developed a Westlaw, like a research memo, and Opine, like a straight up mock memo that I need with the reasoning behind the facts plus the law. And then once I had that, I would edit it. I would check it, do the old fashioned paralegal side check, delete stuff, move quotes around. I would add stuff. I would, in the back of my mind, there was a great quote from the rough trial transcript yesterday that would really make sense here, really supports my argument. The human in the loop stuff, the old fashioned stuff you always do, throwing that in, sending it to the attorneys to review. They would have those same ideas. I'd be called to a hotel room. Hey, Andrew, can you sit next to me on my couch in my room? And can we just go through this? I know there's some great quotes from 2 days ago during the proceedings with this one witness that really support this argument. And we're doing that, checking it. Our assistant is remote over Zoom, formatting it in the right formatting for the pleading paper for the California judge, running the table of authorities, table of contents at the front of the document. And we're all sort of working together in SharePoint live in this living, breathing document to get it done before 12:59. And so who does this compress? Well, just have me, the paralegal, and the ultra senior partner that's been doing this for 50 years, and everyone else is gone.
Well, and you have the person that is formatting the document and preparing the table of contents. Is that a person or an agent or an AI agent?
It could be an AI agent, but you know what? It could be. But this person, at least for the boutique that was doing the pro bono trial I was working on, this person is irreplaceable, right? Because they know how to do the formatting and do this, and there's not enough time to ensure that the agent's outputs or the table of authorities is right or the table of contents is right. Whereas this person has done it millions of times. This person is also the bookkeeper of the firm. This person is the e-billing coordinator. This person is the chief people officer. This person is invaluable. And so, in the administrative departments, I see so much. I'm so cynical about administration departments of law firms because they're so bloated and have been built up over time as this blob in space that no partner really cares to deal with. Just a part of the overhead that no one wants to touch. At boutiques, you really understand that one really good person oftentimes, depends on the scale,
They wear
is what's needed. You wear multiple hats and you can flex up and down. You can get, Paragon or True Legal or any number of outsourced, worker providers that are really good, that have really great people that feel really good about their jobs in great organizations, helping as needed. And it's not really any skin off anyone's back. In fact, it's a more delightful experience because the person that's wearing the multiple hats who really knows everything is marshaling and operating.
Wow, that's just like an amazing story that you just painted. How you can put all of these tools to work with, just a few experts who knows their shit to get it through to the finish line.
One of the cool things that I noticed at trial was, I was sitting at the counsel table. I'm not a lawyer. I've always wanted to tell my mom that I was at the counsel table, right? I was sitting at the counsel table, and as the other side was directing or crossing witnesses, I would be chatting with casebuild.ai, my app, asking it questions. Hey, this guy's asking the witness XYZ, what would be great questions to come up with on redirect? And because it has all the information, all the trial transcripts that I'm loading in from the last day into the platform, the whole context in this superhuman way, it's spitting out answers that I would then use a little button I made, to export it to a docx, pull up the docx. I would show my laptop to the partner sitting next to me, and there might be 8 questions there to ask on a redirect. And he would go through and farmer's market shop that and say, these 2 questions I'm going to ask. And he would lean across the table. This guy of 50 years, Morgan Lewis, Cooley, every large firm experience you can imagine. Hearing him verbatim read those questions and getting that fist bumped under the table after it happened, there is nothing that feels better. And the hilarious thing is opposing counsel had associates, 15 people on their team versus 4 people sitting in the gallery. And one of them came up to me afterward and said, hey, what are you doing up there? Are you using AI? Can you help me for my June trial in Lancaster?
My gosh, that's amazing. You can't get a better story than that. The opposing counsel coming over to say, I want you on my side because you just did some amazing work up there. Wow. What a great story. Wow. So tell me about this casebuild.ai, because there are a lot of homebrews out there by different lawyers. We see vibe coding now being very hot and trending. And then there's also a lot of legal AI startups that's raised a ton of money. Some of them are smoke and mirrors. Some of them are really tasty strawberries. How much of a threat do you think something like Claude is? Because everything right now, if you have the imagination and if you know how to offload the knowledge in your brain into the form of a skill, anything now seems possible for you to build yourself. So how much room do you think there is still for these purpose-built solutions out there?
Yeah, and that's such a wonderful question. The oft quoted things you hear all the time on LinkedIn or wherever, conferences, security, the C, all of the things. When it comes time to moving from something that lives on your laptop or lives in your case team, like Casebuild AI, I built it just for this case, just for this one case, because the budget was zero. I needed something, and the firm was fine with me taking their credit card, making an Anthropic account, putting in their API key, and running with it. But if you're going to collaborate externally, or you're gonna use the app for different things, you really do need an enterprise-grade application that can withstand these security reviews and these procurement processes at firms and companies. So I think that's still a barrier. But on the other hand, my opinion is a lot of the real meaningful work, especially a law firm is oftentimes just an idea. What is a law firm, really? It's a technology platform on top of a referral base in a lot of cases. And when you see all the laterals and moving around and people treating it like a dirty sidewalk instead of treating it like a Singapore sidewalk, blob in space syndrome, it becomes less important what the law firm is and more important what the case team is, who the lawyers are on the case team, what are they doing day to day? And you know that by looking at the invoices as a legal operator in-house. And I view the tools like CaseBuild as being deployed at that case team level. And so in my mind, it is more important than anything that's going on at the enterprise level at the law firm from a purely like what's happening on my case. Now, when you partner with a law firm, especially as a legal operator, someone in charge of outside counsel management with my Zoom hat on, you want them to be able to have standardization. You want to be able to count on quality because you want to get better rates. You want to be able to use 1 or 2 or 3 or 8 firms at scale, subject to conflicts and jurisdictional coverage. And you want to have your data living in less places, and you want to have associates and counsel and partners that are more up to speed on how your company runs, what the communications look like, what the real risks are, what the commercial priorities are. What do you want to get out of? What does a win look like in a matter? Reconciling these two things, I go back to like my favorite tools, like the Evercrons of the world, which, yeah, they have AI, in the platform in an amazing way, but they also have the stuff that's hard to build that doesn't involve AI, that is the power tool of litigation, deposition designation engine, the Relativity One integration that truly capitalizes on that information in a way that's usable by AI, in a way that'll get partners to log in to a tool to see it instead of needing a paralegal like me to print out a metadata attorney comments sheet in the physical binder for the partner to see someone's work product. So there's these pushes and pulls, but like what I really think is a lot of the legal AI tools that have been useful when it comes to being a co-pilot in Word, or generating a timeline from documents in a thoughtful way, or doing all these things that used to seem magical with these point legal AI solutions, like Claude is breaking that down by focusing on the enterprise, by having legal webinars, by actually sending an olive branch in a way Microsoft has never done. Why doesn't Microsoft just have e-discovery end to end? Why not? They could easily have done that years ago, but they weren't interested in it. And I would say Claude, it's younger, hungrier, scrappier. They're armed with Claude code, which allows them to build so quickly in such a high quality way, the 80% cake baked, that they're actually interested in talking to their internal teams, kind of like at Zoom, talking to their internal teams, going to their legal team and say, hey, how can we make Claude truly useful and better and all encompassing for your team, for your team's workflows, for your outside counsel's workflows? And that's why you have Claude Word plugin being marketed directly to attorneys in webinars now by Anthropic. So I think there's a lot of peril. If you're just a wrapper, like CaseBuild AI is just a wrapper, you really have to rethink how you're going to add value. Now, a lot of people say you want to be multi-model because some models do things better than others. And yeah, I think that's true. But I think we're getting to a place where that's not going to be true, where these models are just so good. It's really just dealer's choice. They all do everything really well. And it's really about how you prompt them, how you delegate roles and responsibilities to agents and humans within a platform that's going to dictate the usefulness of it. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I mentioned for Litigation Labs customers, CaseBuild is free. It's just attached to the client's credit card and Anthropic account. What is valuable in that? Well, it's my taste, my judgment, my working with it in court at the counsel table that matters, that moves the needle, that wins the case. It's not the software.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you mentioned before how important it is now to make that judgment call, not only of how you use the tools, how you prompt the tools, but also what kind of work you allocate to humans versus what kind of work you allocate for tools. And it may not always be what we hear on social media, be like,
Outsource admin work, and then higher level thinking work should be done by humans. Because you just gave an example of how in the last minute, what you relied on for formatting the table of contents was a human. And you trusted that human more than you would trust a tool because that human's done it, a million times. Whereas what you cut down in terms of cost was all of the other associates that worked on the project. So that is so counterintuitive to me. It's so fascinating. I don't know if it's like there's something in there that's like maybe more generally applicable as well and counter to what we believe of like AI takes, the boring, mundane admin tasks, and then humans should focus on the higher level judgment work. Maybe that's not the case.
Well, right. And there's a big difference between doing work within a CLM and a corporate legal department level and being in court filing motions that human judges are going to read. Human judges care more, and their clerks care more about whether something is formatted beautifully for them to read properly, that's in line with the local court rules, to not get bounced and not get read that afternoon. And then you're losing your oral argument at 4 p.m. because the judge hasn't looked at it because your filing was bounced. Whereas the human in the loop and that assistant who did that great work and got it done and then sent it off to the vendor to file and print the courtesy copies to get it to the judge is so much more important in that moment than having 4 AmLaw 100 associates red teaming a research memo, to your point. I never would have thought of it like that, Anna. Maybe that's because I'm still in the fog of war. I think that's really insightful.
Yeah, and it's not only that that person was more valuable than this team of associates, it's more valuable than an AI tool who you would think, can just do it. Like Claude, for example, in their demo, it was like proofreading and formatting was one of their demo use cases, right? But it's so far from being useful enough to do seemingly such a simple task, not so simple in this case. But yeah, I'm just trying to process it, but it's fascinating. I need to let it brew for a little bit longer.
I want to dig a little bit deeper into, you mentioned, for example, for CaseBuild.ai. It has all of that knowledge, all of the expertise that you accrued over the years, all distilled into this assistant that can help other people going through litigation with their cases. And I just want to challenge you a little bit on that because I just want to extrapolate it broader. Claude is right now trying to get people to build skills, which is basically offloading their knowledge, their experience in the form of rules into a document that then can be used by anyone that this skill is shared with. What do you think about the philosophical aspect of what this means down the line? If all of us were incentivized for efficiency purposes, for productivity purposes, to take all of our edge as human experts and distill it into a skill that then can be used by other peoples without us in the loop, then what does that mean for the value of humans? And do you think that means that many people, if they agree to, offload that knowledge into a skill, will become irrelevant?
Yeah. Well, and I think the technology is in a place right now where the skills, I found that the real value in skills is just allowing, Claude to do things with fewer errors, but still prone to errors, right? Just like an associate, first year, second year associate right at law school, departments would still have me carefully check their work and give feedback on their work because you don't 100% trust the output of what they're doing. It's just because they don't have that experience. And sometimes that experience is purely living in the craniums, the biological skulls of humans. But as, to your point, as these technologies evolved and as skills are being able to be wielded by these models in a more effective way than humans are able to wield them. Also, just as you work in these platforms, your knowledge is transferred into the platform and the platform is now self-evolving. Yeah, I think it's the point where this is what people are worried about with Harvey, Lagora, others, where you come in, you get tightly integrated with a big fancy law firm and all of their files and information, and the technology absorbs all of it in a way that no human could. The technology providers achieve these huge valuations because there's a belief that the technology itself will replace these expensive humans. And yeah, I read about that in an article yesterday. I think there's a lot to it. And I think it's really important to kind of do skills inventory for yourself as a worker and be okay, what are my strong suits? What do I have? And they need to go beyond just what one would normally think in the legal industry. How good am I at taking people out to lunch and ordering wine and building a relationship, right? And, if you try to teach that in summer associate training, I think it would go disastrously. They already try to do that just in the wrong way. But to really do a 360-degree understanding of what actually makes this work possible. Well, you got to land the client. You got to keep the client happy. There has to be work to come along. There has to be problems out there and disputes for you to have this client. Like, businesses are all different. There's politics. There's human politics at each business. Each judge is different. Each judge could wake up one day and be completely different than they were 20 cases before. And what you thought you nailed on an analysis through AI, you get wrong and you're surprised because they read an article that day in the Wall Street Journal themselves that changed their perspective on a case.
Yes, or they could be making different decisions before or after they had lunch.
To your point, yeah, like we're living in interesting times where there's compression, like we talked about. There's compression happening in roles and responsibilities. And, I'm not worried about the big law firms. Their model depends on leverage through humans. Their work is what it is. It's high volume, strategic, it's important. CYB, cover your butt. You need to employ them to be defensible to your corporate hierarchy. But it's also created all these opportunities, this new landscape where why am I sharing with all these partners my bounty, my team's bounty, cases I got 3 divorces for to spend all my time doing? Why can't I just leave, open my own law firm, and Andrew will handle all the back office, all the marketing, all the assistant, paralegal, associate, counsel work flexibly with his team of middle American brain trusters, who do things in a really thoughtful way that's developed by thoughtful legal operators. Why not just do that and then charge clients half and make double and everyone's happier? And I think that's a really good question. I almost wanted to buy a domain called quityourlawfirm.com and just send it to like half of the AM Law 100 and be like, why not? Why not? And so I think it's an interesting moment. And you're seeing announcements on LinkedIn, longtime Cravath partners from other fancy firms. No one ever leaves, now leaving and doing that.
I'm seeing the same with the law firms that I used to work for as well, like really well-respected partners needing to start their own practice. But I guess the question and the challenge they're going to run into, which is the problem that you're solving, is they're so used to being coddled by the firm and by, the paralegals and the other admins within the law firm that when they come out and they don't have the technical capabilities, they didn't invest time to learn it. They're going to need someone like you to support them to build this, army of agents that helps them with their business.
Yeah. And, both digital and human, right? And the taste to understand, like you were talking about the example of filing and trial, like what are the roles and responsibilities? Who should be sitting in what seat and doing what? And I think that whole question is being upended, but what's not being upended, to your point, is the best change management for the really strategic, high value, amazing trial lawyer type partners, for instance, is no change management at all. The best change management is none at all. They want, what they need, silver plated for them in a way that's optimal for them to review it, to then add their feedback and for it to actually move the needle on their work for their clients. And yeah, do you need 50 layers of admins that's really always dumping? And I remember just to me, who it's really just me making it happen, and everyone else, the paralegal managers of the firms are forwarding the emails to me and saying, hey, could you do this on Saturday? They're not doing any work, right? The research librarian saying, here's a PDF. I could have pulled that on Westlaw, right? Or, all these roles and responsibilities are now being compressed into what actually matters. And what actually matters is the people taking the stuff from the kitchen, whether it's through technology or AI agents or other people, and then bringing it into the dining room where the partner's sitting with a newspaper having breakfast and can look at it and with their 50 years of high-end experience and understanding their client's business, understanding the jurisdiction, say, actually do this XYZ, and then, put it in the takeout box and ship it to the judge.
Okay, playing the devil's advocate a little bit here, because I've heard from one conversation I had with a law firm, that the person left in the room might not be the senior partners with the 50 years of experience because A, they might be too old school to embrace any kind of technology, and they're about to retire soon, and they're already, multimillionaires. And 2, they're too expensive for a firm. And in this conversation, they said the potential winners could be the mid-level associates. These are the people that are doing the work that still has, 10 years of experience and know how to get it done, but then can really both do the admin work with AI and also level up with AI to really create, a rainmaking business. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's I see that argument. And I think a lot of things can be true at the same time. I definitely see the potential there. What I would say is, how many clients do you have and how much time have you had to get those clients and who's passing those clients to you? That's a reason why people stay at large law firms a lot of times. So that's like one question. But the second point I would say is, those same people would be partners at Quinn Emanuel or Sutton McGoffrey or Latham or DLA Piper anyway. Like, those are the entrepreneurs that would become partners at these firms. And even in the 2019 era, they would find a way to make it happen. These mid-level associates, they're like the 5 or 10% that actually make partner. And so you're giving them tremendous leverage. The quityourlawfirm.com thing, you're giving them tremendous leverage. They're already rising stars. They already have clients. In fact, the clients love them. And the only reason why they're at this firm is because of them. And the reason why all this other work is going to all these other partners at this firm, from employee benefits to bankruptcy to debt advice to whatever, is because of them. Because they like going and drinking wine with them at lunch, because they love them, because they've helped them, because they've made them look like rock stars to their corporate hierarchy, for example, that, yeah, I think that's true. But I will say my firsthand anecdotal knowledge is showing me that even the 75-year-old partners who you think wouldn't be engaged in this, 1,000% absolutely engaged in this, because they see what you're bringing from the kitchen on the silver plate, and they see that it's just you doing it instead of these 50 people. And they're going, wow, because all they've been doing is been getting silver plates. It used to be from 1,000 people working in the kitchen, 3 people bringing it out like the Prince of Arabia or something on a platter. And now it's one dude on roller skates, drive it. And they're like, my God, one dude on roller skates is really effectuating this. It might be 95% of what the 1,000 people used to do, but I can just hire my awesome mid-level associate to come in and help me. And they could add the 5% or the 10% or the 15% or whatever it is. I kind of call it like the last mile. Like you commute, like you're in San Francisco, you take the Caltrain and commute, but you live in Potrero Hill, where you have like a little motorbike that gets you that last mile from the train station to home. And that's where that's filled, with the person that's going to inherit the business. So not necessarily a team of expensive admins who all are managed by people that forward emails and make their lives miserable in this fraternity, sorority, hazing ritual that happens every single day at a big law firm.
Tempted to just end on that mic drop moment there.
No, let's tie us. Come on. Yeah.
What is it? I used to take shots on those, like a shot ski. I did that as a summer associate, going to a bar, and then we all just did a shot ski.
Yeah. And now you only need the amount of people that could take a shot from the shot ski working on your case. You don't need 4 shot skis. Exactly.
My gosh. It's I can just talk to you for ages, but just to wrap up for this podcast or this conversation, what do you think are some of the topics that we didn't talk about that you have some contrarian views to, that you would just like to get it out there, or some plug that you haven't made? Now's your chance.
Yes. I'm coming from an in-house background with a team of 100 plus people, I should say, and seeing the LinkedIn wars of shampoo is better, condition is better, in-house versus law firm. Who's going to take the work and which technology platform is going to help them do it? No, I see that as a false narrative. I see it as a false narrative where like the real value of all these technologies and the way all this works is evolving and the roles and responsibilities we're talking about is in the seam of collaboration between law firm and in-house. And the controversial take is you're actually going to need a lot fewer people in-house to create 90% of the value in this new era.
So you don't think the cut is coming from the law firm side? You think it's coming from the in-house side?
I do. And I think thankfully, it seems like there's just going to be a lot more companies and a lot more need to have smart, capable lawyer, operator, legal engineer is basically what everyone in-house is going to become, types with GCs that know how to tell the story effectively to the business.
So I think what you're painting in terms of the picture, like the picture you're painting is on the law firm side. What we're going to get is a 50 to 70-year-old partner with Andrew on skates, bringing in the work product on a silver platter. And then on the in-house side, what we're going to have is a very effective storyteller GC together with a legal ops, legal engineer. And that's it on both sides.
Well, you know what? I think there's plenty of room for the middle. I think there's plenty of room for the middle too. But I think I was dramatic and used these extreme examples just to show, like, for example, a pro bono matter where there's literally no budget is like, where the roller skate to the senior level is. I think that's not ideal. That's not optimal. I think just the idea that you have to have bodies in a room, that you have to have 15 people on a matter is done. And ideally, there'd be really thoughtful, great people every layer orchestrating the work product instead of people sitting on people's necks and shoulders like currently happens.
Do you think, personal level, do you think that AI has changed our professional lives so much and given us both a lot of anxiety and a lot of opportunity, especially given you're at the frontier exploring this? Do you think it's made your life better and made you happier as a person?
Ooh. That's such a great question. Like on one level, yes. On the other level, no, because I can feel myself getting dumber every day when I reach for the cookie jar of using an AI tool to help me respond to someone's request, like in-house, for example, like someone's request from the business about export control violations and law. And normally I do this deep dive research myself. And instead I just type a prompt in, then Google it, see that it's generally right and send it off. I think we risk becoming over-reliant on tools for certain things and under-reliant on it for others. From a personal standpoint, like asking parental advice on Claude or these other tools is really great, but it points me to websites or blogs that I would never ordinarily have looked at. NIH papers on the latest like research experiments into parenting. There's this whole world that's opened up because of these tools in a way that actually allows you to use the time you have in the evening between passing out and watching, reruns of Golden Girls, to do. So I'd say it's a mixed bag. I would say overall, especially because of who I was in 2019, AI has only added rocket fuel to the fire on like what my skill sets are, what my interests are, what I bring to the people that I work with. But I can see it going both ways.
Yeah, just take Claude as an example. On one hand, it's definitely made my world expand in terms of giving me lots of information, giving me lots of guidance. For me, it'd be like, how do I make this pasta? Because I never cook Western food. So giving me like recipes. But then at the same time, it's like information overload. Our human brains simply cannot process all this vast amounts of data that is just so readily at your fingertips. That's one. And the second thing is it makes every waking moment that I have feel inefficient if I'm not automating something in the background. Because especially now with, OpenClaw available and Claude Cowork and all these skills come like when I'm sleeping, something should be running in the background. So when I wake up, there should be a work product waiting for me. Whereas I never used to have that kind of worry before. And yes, you could spend 7 hours, responding to 5 emails, and that was okay. And now that's no longer acceptable because we must all be 100x the productivity levels that we were at before. So that's kind of where I'm coming at in terms of, struggling between like, is this making my life better or?
So Anna, like a question for you is, like what sort of the Europeans have done, like turn off your cell phone when 6 p.m. hits or 5 p.m. hits. Do you think we should do that as it relates to these AI tools?
Absolutely, yes. I think so. And I think it should come at the regulatory level because you know that as a capitalist society, no companies will ever do that. They will always say, let's push. Like once you're at 100x, let's push for 1000x. Unless there's regulations on this, we're all going to just completely burn out. I don't think it's going to make us, more focused on our family lives and watch more Golden Girls. That's just my opinion. What do you think?
Man, I vote for more Golden Girls. I vote for Anna for president of the Shenzhen economic area. You have my votes. I totally agree. And I think like when you look, here's another hot take. When you look at these layoffs that are happening and executives are citing AI as a reason for being able to make these cuts, what you have is like really kind of someone like who I was at Zoom, that you have one really overworked person running training, running e-discovery, running outside counsel management, investigation, planning the offsite, hiring the improv comedian to come with these tools that make you more efficient, that allow you to do stuff in the background like OpenClaw and others. And you have one desperate soul crying out like that ghost in the bathroom at Harry Potter for help. And at what point does it become unsustainable, right? Or like at what point do the AI models become so good that they just literally clone you like Westworld and they could just use 5 of you to do all 5 things that you're responsible for now? And I think in any scenario, it begs for a little bit of oversight from our government or someone.
Yeah, I think to be continued, Andrew. This conversation is, we can leave it here as a cliffhanger that we will explore for our next chat.
Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having this conversation and giving so many amazing hot takes and great analogies that you just came out with like off the bat. I don't know how you do it. Like maybe you have an AI running in the background, but I enjoyed them so much and I look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Me too, Anna. Thanks for having me.